Welcome back to Deep Nonsense, the podcast where we take the craziest concepts from movies and ask the question, could it actually happen? I'm your host, and today we are diving into one of the most iconic paranormal comedies of all time, Ghostbusters. Who you gonna call when your house is haunted? According to the movies, it's a bunch of scientists armed with proton packs, ghost traps, and a lot of attitude. But here's the question. Could we really build a device to catch and contain a ghost? To get to the bottom of this supernatural science, we've used Google Gemini's deep research to dig into physics, electromagnetic fields, and even a bit of paranormal theory to see if busting makes sense, or if it's just making us feel good. Is it possible to detect, capture, and store a ghost? Or are the Ghostbusters just zapping pure nonsense? Strap on your proton pack and let's see if science can keep up with the spirit world. Here we go! All right, dude.
I love your enthusiasm.
That was good. All right, so
it was very good.
here we go, dude. You know how Ghostbusters kind of put this crazy idea in our heads, like, what if we could actually catch a ghost?
Well, yes, of course. Well, you sent a ton of cool stuff about that, and I enjoyed reading it. But today we're going to take a deep dive into the hypothetical science of how to make that happen. Could we become busters ourselves?
Awesome. Our mission is to explore those what ifs based on what I sent you. Now, obviously, mainstream science isn't really buying into the whole ghost thing, right?
Right. And I think that's to their loss. But let's have some fun with it, okay? Let's see where the science might lead us. We're talking leftover energy consciousness after death, maybe even other dimensions, or as they say in English, dimensions. We'll see how we might detect and even trap those things based on these ideas and touch on how different folks approach the different ghosts.
Sounds good. And yeah, maybe geek out a little bit about Ghostbusters.
A little bit. Come on now. All right. So where do we even start with us? The interesting thing here is while science starts right now anyway, and all sources agree, there's just no hard proof that ghosts exist. Mainstream science right now at least considers ghost hunting pseudoscience. Instead, they've got natural explanations for spooky experiences like a word I don't know how to pronounce. Pareidolia.
It's pareidolia.
Thank you.
It's like how our brains see shapes when they're not there. Like you look at a cloud and be like, "Oh, that's a turtle. That's a T-Rex. That's a mushroom." That
Thank
kind
you,
of
narrator
stuff.
number one. You have taught me a new word today, pareidolia. All right.
Yeah,
like
it's when we find patterns when they're not there. Like if you look at a toilet and be like, and it has two knobs on it, you're like, that kind of looks like a face. That kind of.
See, okay. So our brains are associating things in order to make some kind of sense or categorize them. I get it. But not only is there pareidolia, there is also environmental factors like EMF, electromagnetic fields from our devices, infrasound. Okay, so that's super low frequency sound.
Like you feel it, but you don't hear it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's interesting. So we've got those two, and then we've even got something as what might seem sort of as simple as temperature swings, air quality issues. I mean, you name it. Plus, there's not even one agreed upon definition of what a ghost is.
Yeah. And personal stories and blurry photos or recordings just don't seem to fly in the world of science. You got to have facts. Yeah.
Got to have facts. Okay. So science is skeptical. We got that. But let's say, just for fun, that ghosts are real. That's where we're going to start today. We're going to make the assumption that ghosts are real. One idea we see a lot of is this residual energy thing, right?
Right. Like the stone tape theory. Have you ever heard of that?
I've not. What's that?
It says that like intense emotional events can leave some kind of imprint on stuff like stone or quartz, almost like a recording of what happened. And maybe under the right conditions, these recordings can play back, like triggered by the EMFs we talked about or changes in the atmosphere. And that's what leads to those repeating ghostly sightings or sounds. Like I've always explained it as like you got an old house. There's a thunderstorm outside and the lightning, and you look up on the stairs and you see a ghost of an old lady walking down the stairs. Creepy, right? What if no, but what if like 100 years ago some old lady was walking down the stairs in her own house and the lightning struck a tree in the front yard and that just happened to energize all the nails in the house and it recorded her walking down the steps, right? And then 100 years later, the lightning strikes the exact same spot, and the residual energy from that triggers it like you're playing it back. You know, almost like when you run a piece of cassette tape over the recording head, and it records sound to it, and then you just run it over the head again, and it plays it back. I think that's what stone tape theory is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. I totally see what you're saying. And some of the sources, some of the material we reviewed even said that magnetic flux and iron oxides are a potential mechanism. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating thinking about it, like information storage, but sources also point out the big problem. We have zero scientific proof that materials can store and play back information like that.
I really think they get too much into the details when it comes to things like that, but fine, whatever. Look, trying to recreate that in the lab, I get it. Yeah, extremely difficult. So that's one theory down, right? But what about consciousness surviving after death? This is the one that
Oh,
really fascinates me.
yeah, this is the one where things get real deep, right?
Deep nonsense. Anyway,
Okay, so the idea is that our consciousness, maybe our soul or our spirit, doesn't just disappear when we die, right?
okay, right. Some theories have even brought up the quantum consciousness, the idea that maybe quantum information leaves the brain during near-death experiences.
I've
All
heard
right,
of
what
that.
about that?
No,
Right?
I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a couple maybe that are familiar to people. Then there's the other classic argument: energy can't be created or destroyed, right? So we've got one of the original theories of energy and matter. It just changes. So where
Right.
does our energy go? That's the question. So if energy can't, we do at least have some sort of a scientific basis to say, well, we have to at least answer that question. And this really makes you think about what consciousness is. Now, while quantum physics is super interesting, the biggest problem is we have no scientific way to show consciousness existing without a brain. So that's the roadblock. That's the wall they've come up against. And as for that energy argument, I mean, yeah, it's true, right? Energy can't be destroyed, but when we die, our energy does at least dissipate as heat and other, natural processes. Rah, 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 rah. Neil
Okay.
deGrasse Tyson, rah.
No, that one is tricky too. Now, things get even weirder with the whole interdimensional entity idea. This is basically saying that ghosts aren't dead people, but they're beings from other dimensions or parallel universes that are
Ooh, okay.
somehow jumping dimensions or popping into our reality.
Maybe through some kind of rip in space time or loop or even a wormhole or something, huh?
Yeah, thanks, Jack Nicholson.
You're welcome. You're
Yeah,
welcome,
no,
kid.
they even mention shadow people sometimes being interdimensional, which is something that you see when you talk about UFO theories, which is a
Okay,
whole lot of
right.
ball of wax.
Yeah, I mean, okay. We have to pause here, right? I mean, that's deep nonsense does the deep dive, and I think that's something we have to consider too at some point is something related to unidentified flying objects or aliens.
Hmm.
But look, you see a lot of that. You see so many possibilities. Let's say for a second that one of these things is real. All right, that's the
Okay.
big question. If we're talking residual energy, maybe we need super sensitive EMF detectors or other environmental sensors to pick up those triggers. What about that?
Yeah, I mean that makes sense for consciousness. Maybe something crazy advanced, like I don't know, trying to detect quantum entanglement or something.
Yeah, quantum entanglement. I think that's how the last date I went on went. Anyway, so for interdimensional beings, though, I think what we have to be looking for is weird disturbances in space time, right? I mean, there has to be some kind of measurable disturbance in space time.
This is great, but all of this is theoretical. It's reaching way beyond our current tech and understanding. These possible detection methods are just following the logic of the theories themselves. Okay, so let's say we can detect them. How do we catch them?
Okay. Even trickier. I mean, come on, right? For residual energy, we can posit theories about what happens to energy after we die, but the idea of trapping these things, okay? So for residual energy, maybe it's some kind of energy sink. Maybe that would work.
Was that like a heat sink where it just dissipates the energy, or I don't know. What about for conscious entities? Like maybe like a containment field to trap their consciousness. Maybe something
Ooh,
like
I like it.
they call it a psychic anchor. Have you ever heard of a psychic anchor?
I'm not familiar with the term.
It's
Interesting, though. It's interesting. I like it. Now, wait, was that part of your research, or were you just already familiar
No,
with
no,
it?
no. The concept of a psychic anchor comes up in a few different contexts, especially in like metaphysical and paranormal discussions. So, generally, they think of it
Ah,
as like a person or a location that serves as a focal point or a grounding mechanism for psychic energy, kind of like Dana Barrett's apartment building in Ghostbusters. You know,
okay, okay, right. Okay,
so
so
that kind of thing.
there we go. That's interesting.
That seems like a big trap, but we want to talk about like a small trap, I guess.
Well,
So,
and a trap that can be directed, right? That's the other thing. So we're
right.
looking for a trap that essentially obeys our will. Now, for beings from other dimensions, maybe there is some kind of dimensional barrier or some kind of tuning device to keep them from hopping dimensions. That's a type of trap.
Dude, this is really starting to sound like pure science fiction, which brings us to Ghostbusters.
I was going to say, come on, this is Ghostbusters, right?
I know. So our sources are very clear that the tech in the movie is completely made up. Completely. It's not based on any science we know right now.
Yeah, no kidding. But go on. It's so fun to imagine.
Yeah, and on top of all this, we have all these different ways people approach the whole ghost thing.
Okay, this is true, right? And I know for some people, this kind of stuff is it's actually quite serious. So we're not downplaying or making fun of anyone's beliefs here, but we are having a little fun with the what ifs. Okay, so you've got parapsychology trying to be all scientific, but running into a ton of roadblocks.
Right.
Okay, then you have regular ghost hunters with their own personal experiences and evidence, and we can't. The other thing is we can't rule that out. Personal experiences are something that by definition are not measurable, so that's difficult. But mainstream science is trying to find natural explanations. That's always the way it is because that's the purview, that is the arena of science. Now, again, beyond that, we've got the whole world of psychic mediums. I mean, it's a lot.
Oh, it does show you just how many different ways people try to make sense of the unknown. It's crazy. Now, each approach has its own unique perspective. Each approach has its own unique perspective. So we're not discounting any of them. But as we wrap up this deep dive, it's pretty clear that scientifically catching ghosts is still just a big what if based on what we know right now.
I agree, but it's such a fun what if.
It is. I mean, all of this is a what if you really think about it. The fact that ghosts exist are a what if. The fact that we could catch them is a what if. It's I don't know.
Okay, so here, all right, personal question, right?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if you ran into something you thought was a ghost, what kind of evidence would convince you?
I have no idea.
It really makes you think, though, doesn't it? I mean, about the line between scientific proof and what you believe personally. It's heavy stuff, man.
And on that note, thanks for diving in with us, everybody.
And look, that's right. Thanks for diving in. Now you can go back to your regular scheduled lives. And for everyone listening, keep those questions coming because there's always more to explore, always. Until next time, stay curious and stay spooky.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Deep Nonsense. I hope you enjoyed diving into the science or lack thereof behind the Ghostbusters. Whether it's catching ghosts, building a cyborg cop, or creating a never-ending candy, it's always wild to see just how far fiction stretches reality. If you've got a crazy movie concept you want us to break down, hit us up. Leave a comment or send us a message with your ideas, and who knows, your suggestion might just be the next episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Your support helps us keep the nonsense going. Thanks for listening to Deep Nonsense, where we take movie magic and see if it could ever become real. Catch you next time. Did it catch you like a ghost? Look out! Oh, I'm so clever.